When I was in high school, my two closest friends were Colin and Eric. They were both taller, skinny guys. I was a small young woman who has a 16-year-old could pass for 13. One night we went for a walk. While I was walking in, the two guys were rollerblading slowly along. To get to my home, we went through the middle school parking lot. The lot was at the front of the school and a row of trees separated the lot and the road. Just as we entered the lot, conversation broke as Eric and Colin decided to race to the end. They took off as it was walking a car portions of the lot and slowly drove up beside me. It was about 10 o'clock at night, but the lights in the front of the school meant I could see the car pretty clearly. It was navy blue, and its black windows were tinted dark. There were no decals or anything on it. Nothing that said security or neighborhood watch. The driver was a Caucasian man, probably in his late 20s. He didn't look overweight, but his face was wide and looked a bit swollen or something. He was wearing a red shirt, no uniform. He rolled down his window and spoke to me. "Hey, you're not allowed to be here. You're trespassing." I was confused. I stopped walking and took a small step toward the car to hear. "I'm better." "Pardon me? I'm gonna have to take you downtown, get in the car." Now, it was pretty clear this guy wasn't security or a cop. So I immediately put more distance between myself and the car and a loud firm voice I said, "Now." The driver looked confused at that. I glanced towards the end of the parking lot. American Colin had seen the car and were skating back quickly. He tried again. "You're in a lot of trouble. Get in the car." "No." At that moment, Colin and Eric reached me. I think one of them asked the driver who he is. And the guy didn't say a word and just pulled away quickly. We all three discussed how creepy that was as we continued our walk. When I got home and said goodbye to the guys, I went inside and told my mom about the instant she thought I was overreacting. I found the non-emergency number for police and give them a call. They told me at the middle school did have a security officer there that there was no reason that he would have had any right to ask me to get inside of his car. I have grapheme the color synesthesia, which gives me a very good memory for numbers and letters. I remember the driver's license plate and told the police, but I'm not sure if anything came with it. Moved into a large studio apartment complex a few months ago. I'm a single female with a 2-year-old daughter. My sister and a few of her friends came over about 3 weeks ago to hang out, have some beers, and play Cards Against Humanity. My studio has an enclosed patio, save for a door-size opening, no gate or door. Since my child was sleeping, I had everyone chill outside on the patio. We were having a great time joking, talking, and listening to low-playing music when the security guard entered my patio. "Hi there. Are we being too loud?" as someone placed a complaint. No, you guys are fine. Just doing my rounds." He lingered for a minute more than strolled out into the night. We continued our activities and didn't really give him a second thought. He returned about 25 minutes later, right after most of the group had left. Only my sister, her friend Cody, and I remained. He was an overweight late 40s, early 50s white male and wore glasses. He strolls into my patio once again, strike up conversation. We learned he is a retired cop that had quit the force after suffering a heart attack on duty. He states he had to undergo a quintuple bypass surgery, and after recovery, he started night security jobs. I felt sorry for him because of his medical history and sat and listened to him for quite a while. He must have stayed at least 30 minutes before my sister got uncomfortable and loudly announced that we were going to bed. He bid us good night and left. And again. My sister said that she didn't like the way that he was looking at me, and she thought that he took a liking to me. I initially told her she was reading into it too much and that the dude was just lonely and had a long shift ahead. A week and a half later, my sister is visiting again, and we are sitting inside my place talking. My studio has a black screen door, which is visible to see through in a wood door. I had the screen locked and the woods door wide open. The lead Samarin, my sister, is talking to me, and I have the sensation that someone is looking at me, so I glance up. The security guard is standing at the doorway of my patio, staring. I say hello and the jerks forward as if expecting an invitation in or something. But I turn my attention back to my sister when I glanced back again. And he's gone. This week on Tuesday, I took a shower and threw on my red-soaked Japanese-style robe. I was washing dishes for about 25 minutes and had poured a glass of wine. I turned from the kitchen to sit on my couch and they strangled a scream. The security guard is almost pressed up against my screen door, staring straight at me through the foot-long crack of the wooden door. I was so startled and shaken. But the first thing I did was make sure my robe wasn't exposing me. I ran up to the screen. "What are you doing? You scared me?" No motion. No apology. I was just doing my rounds. My scalp is crawling and I'm still shaky. "Okay, well, I'm going to bed now." He is still right up next to the screen door all the way inside my patio and turns and looks at my beach cruiser parked against the wall. "Oh, you have a bike. You should put that inside because someone could take it." "Yeah, I'll get to it." I pretty much slammed the door shut and locked the door. I sit down with the wine and calm my nerves. I was shaken up but wasn't sure if he really was being a creeper. Or just a lonely individual that was looking for someone that had expressed interest. After a debate with my friends and sister, I contacted the property manager. I was actually surprised at how quickly it escalated. They took my verbal incident report over the phone and just informed me today that the guy has been fired. The property manager told me to call the police if I see him on my premises again. At the time of the story, I was 20 years old. I'm 27 now, and I should also mention that I'm a female. And I was working part-time in the cosmetic department at a drugstore, working mostly evenings being a student. No, I was never overly afraid of being there at night. It wasn't a bad neighborhood at all, middle upper class, and there were always at least 4 people working in the store at a time. However, regardless of the neighborhood we were in, idiots will be idiots, and the theft rate in our store was at an all-time high. And it was usually targeted in the evenings. This company was a fantastic company to work for. And they genuinely cared about our safety and of course the products that were going to go missing. So they hired a security company to help cover the store in the evenings, mostly the cosmetic department. I should also mention that although there were always other employees in the store, the cosmetics department is pretty secluded, and there was only ever one employee, usually a female, scheduled in the department at a time. Because of this, the company of a security guard was definitely welcome to help pass the time. On a long, quiet night. I worked 4 evenings a week and another girl covered the other evenings, and it was for the most part the same schedule each week. There were a few different guards that will come to our store. But on most occasions, it was only this one male, I guess around 25 years old, not unattractive and very friendly. We'll call him Mike. Mike would often come in his uniform and post at our counter and basically scare away potential thieves by doing just that. Quite often we would chit-chat and pass the time having idle conversation. I'm very talkative, pretty much an open book, and sometimes too forthcoming with personal information. I began noticing that in my shifts, it was only ever Mike on duty, and asked him about it, to which he replied, "Yeah, you just stuck with me now." Everyone else says other postings that was entirely possible. And I didn't think much of it. That is until I went into my store and one of my nights off to pick something up and saw that there was a different guard there with the other evening employee. We'll call her Sarah. I said hello to Sarah and the other guard said, "Oh, I must be Mike's night off," to which the other guard applied. "Mike only works Sunday through Wednesday." Well, that caused a little lump in my throat. That was my exact schedule. There has to be a coincidence, right? 20-year-old naive me thought so. On with my life I went, not worried about a thing. Things that followed were a series of minor creepy encounters with Mike running into him at the movie theater in my town when I knew from previous conversations that he lived in the town 20 minutes away, which had its own theater with the same showings, having them show up in my work on the day that I took an extra shift in uniform, claiming he was on his lunch break and now gets his prescriptions at my store instead of the one near his house due to better services. I asked the pharmacy tech if he had a prescription filled and she said no. The next thing still gives me the chills, not in the good way, and is when I started being not so friendly to the sky. I also want to make it clear that on many occasions we'll have in conversations with Mike I hadn't met, should my awesome boyfriend, there is no way he thought I could have been available or interested in him. After a vacation that Mike took with some friends, he was back to work in the same shifts as me at the drugstore. And I was remaining neutral towards him, still having conversation to pass the time. He asked if I'd like to see some photos that he had taken from his vacation. It was a road trip. So he had a ton of scenery, pictures, etc. I said, sure, and took his phone from him. He said, just keep swiping left to see all the pics. So I'm scrolling through and one swipe too many. And I'm looking at a full-blown winner pic. Of course, I kind of jump stutter a bit and say, oh, whoops, I think I went a bit too far there and passed the phone back to him thinking it's a total accident. And he clearly sent that to a girlfriend or something. Except he isn't embarrassed at all. He replies with, I was hoping you'd see that, in the creepiest grin I had ever seen. Chills again, just typing this. I was all of a sudden very busy and didn't have time for chit-chat that evening. The next morning, I placed a call to the company he worked for and explained to them that I thought he might have a crush on me. And I was feeling slightly uncomfortable. I told them I didn't want to cause a scene and was hoping they could just change his location. Or at the very least, his schedule. I sometimes have too much compassion and didn't want to get them in trouble and was worried that maybe he thought that I would like his picture for some reason. And that it was my mistake. Like I said, sometimes I overshare and maybe he got the wrong idea. I was thrilled the next night when I went in and there was another security guard at the store. I was grateful that a supervisor had listened to my concerns. However, when myself and the rest of the closing crew locked up for the evening, we heard a car engine start up just as we left the store. When I looked for where the sound was coming from, it was in the corner of the mall parking lot, which was completely empty and dark. And it felt a knot form in my stomach when it was the same vehicle that Mike drove. I had seen him pull up multiple times at the front of our store by the cosmetics department. Although I couldn't quite make out the exact color of the car, I was convinced it was the same. I was trying so hard to convince myself that was just someone with the same vehicle also closing up for the night. The car drove out of the parking lot, which made me feel better. When I got to my car, I noticed a note under my wiper. It read, I'm so sad that my location got changed. We'll try to come back to your store as soon as I can. In the meantime, let's get together with this phone number. I'm basically puking in my mouth from nerves at this point. I jump into my car and get out of there as fast as I can. The next day I call my supervisor again. This time I told him the whole story and asked to relay the message that I am not interested in the please leave me alone. I also told my store manager, who was a pretty awesome guy who responded with a livid response and placed a call to the supervisor as well, asking that Mike be advised not to step foot back on our store premises. I didn't see or hear from Mike for a few weeks after that. I thought I was in the clear. I hadn't told my boyfriend anything at this point. It was a fairly new relationship and I didn't want him to be weirded out by it. Weeks later, I am barely thinking about Mike and his forceful advances when it is a very rainy evening and I am at work setting up a new fall collection. When it's raining and dark, it's very hard to see out into the parking lot of the store. Basically, all you can see is the windows and the reflection of yourself in the store. I was over by the windows, bent over putting some things in the bottom shelf, when a car honked outside the window. Of course I look up to see what was happening. And as I did over my shoulder and the reflection of the store, I could see Mike standing behind me, just standing and staring. I think I jumped a little, probably peed a bit. I tried not to make like I even saw him, although I'm sure he knew I did. And I hustled to the other side of the store, with the same manager who I told the story to was working. When I told the manager, he ran back to the cosmetics department, but Mike was gone. We later watched the whole thing on camera. That evening, my manager placed a very angry call once again the Mike supervisor who told us Mike had quit the week before after having told to stay away from our store. Yikes. You may be wondering why no one called the police at this point. But honestly, it just didn't seem dangerous enough. No one was getting hurt. It was just kind of creepy. That is until I had finally told my boyfriend about it to my parents, and I stopped driving myself to work. I had developed a bit of fear going in my car alone at night. Therefore, either my boyfriend or mom or dad were driving me and picking me up from work. Except this one night. My parents were out of town and my boyfriend had a thing to go to this particular Sunday evening, so I drove myself. After closing time, I said my goodbyes to my co-workers and walked in my car at the end of the parking lot. The parking lot has a river at the end of it, with some benches overlooking the river with zero lights at nighttime. The only lights are the ones shining from the middle of the parking lot. I know, super safe spot to park, right? In my defense, the parking lot was always completely full when I got to work. So I'm walking in my car, and I see nothing. And then I hear someone speaking. I immediately recognize it as Mike's voice. He says something like, "Why would you do this to me? Why would you make me believe you wanted me? We had so much fun together." As luck would have it, the pharmacist that had closed with me that night wasn't yet in his car as he took the garbage around the side of the building to the bin. I yelled, "Jim, wait up a second," and hightailed it over to his vehicle, where I said, probably a little too loudly, "Call 911." The police arrived and scoured the area from Mike was gone without a trace and never saw him again. And I'm thankful I never had to face whatever he had planned for me that night. I'm a 16-year-old girl from Colorado. This encounter took place earlier today, and I thought it was creepy enough to share. There's been a lot of talk about cops and officers of the law abusing their power. And I am not one to claim that all police officers are horrible people. But this definitely challenged my perspective. I was at a retail store, popular enough to remain unnamed, with my mom, brother, and grandmother. I had dropped them off in front of the store and left the park. Walking into the entrance, they were nowhere to be found. I assumed that they were already shopping without me. As he walked into the entrance the store, there are usually 2 or 3 claw machines against the wall next to the shopping carts. I love claw machines. I know it's pretty lame. As I was beginning to put my first of $7 into the machine, I could see the reflection of a man approaching me through the glass of the game. I'm quite an awkward person. So any unexpected human interaction makes me jump a little bit. I turned around to see the security guard. He was a young white male, probably in his early 20s. I hadn't even entered the store at this point. So as confused as to why he was coming up to me. I couldn't have stolen something or done anything wrong. "It will be the first one of the data," when he said, chuckling a little bit and winking at me. I give a nervous giggle and turn back to play the game. "What's your name?" he asked me, taking a step closer. And that panic, I gave him my real name. He was a cop, so I shouldn't have. After a few moments of awkward conversing and unwanted compliments about my appearance, I decided to leave the machine and start into the store. Do you ever get the feeling where you can literally feel eyes scanning you up and down? Yeah, that was me. I turned to see him as I walked off, and he looked absolutely angry. Okay, weird, I thought, but I figured it wasn't a big deal. Okay, so here's where the story gets creepy. I walked around the entire store at least 3 times. Every 3 to 5 minutes, I turned around and see the same security officer, as if he were following me. Of course, it could have been a coincidence. That was until what happened next. I caught him filming me. I can't even remember which aisle it happened in. I was looking for glycerin and gelatin for a special effects project. When I heard a lady yelling, I spun around to find the security officer with his phone pointed at me. And the lady apparently caught him filming me. As soon as him and I made eye contact, he walked away. I looked at the lady who called him out and she told me what she saw. She told me that he was filming me and the video was about 10 minutes long. I didn't know how to react to this as she walked past me to continue shopping. I didn't see much of him after that. We left the store soon after, but not until I played another couple of rounds the claw machine. About an hour ago, I got a text from phone number I didn't know. As I opened it, I almost peed myself. It was the video of me taken earlier today. I blocked the number after showing it to my parents. We reported the number, but nothing has been discovered yet. I have no idea why he sent that video recording of me or how he got my number. But I'm never going back to find out. If this happened to me when I was 19, which would have been in 2003. I was born and raised in a small town, and I was pretty sheltered throughout my childhood and teenage years. I was always warned about stranger danger, but had never really been in a bad situation before. That is until this happened. After high school, my best friend Jennifer moved to Los Angeles to attend USC. I would say that at this point in my life, I have never been to a truly large city before. So when I went to visit her, it was a bit of a culture shock for me, especially things like the subway, bus, and train systems. Everyone seemed to know exactly where they were going with no help from anyone. And it was overwhelming to me. Luckily, I made it to her dorm, okay, from the airport. I stayed for a week or so. We had a great visit. Jennifer and I were always together, which made navigating public transit fairly easy and comfortable. However, on the day I was heading back to the airport, she had to work. I didn't want her to worry. And I felt fairly comfortable. After riding the bus and subway throughout the week, I said my goodbyes and managed to get on the train to the airport. The first stretch of my trip to the airport went fine. I think I had even printed off directions. In case you've never used the LA train system, it travels through a lot of smaller neighborhoods before it hits more recognizable typical this way to airport signs. At some point, I became convinced that I was going the wrong way, that I had no idea where I was, that I was going to miss my plane. And I began to panic. I got off at the next stop and found the map of the transit lines, studying them like they were written in Greek. That's when he came up to me. Now when I think about what he looked like, it's a blur. He was big, that I remembered, and had 100 pounds on me easy. But he was a security guard. And he was very friendly. Asked if I needed help. He seemed to genuinely want to help me. So when he asked me if I wanted to ride to the airport, which was very close, he told me. I accepted, grateful to get where I was going. For me at the time, security guard was as good as a cop. I know now that is not the case. But I implicitly trusted him because of his badge and uniform. The first odd feeling I had was the way he threw my suitcase into his trunk, just tossing it and slamming the trunk. Then I got into his car. And it was filthy, with cigarette butts and trash strewn throughout. I remember not knowing where to put my feet and had to put them on top of the piles of garbage. Still, he had a picture of a little kid dangling from his rearview mirror. And so I thought, okay, it's not a big deal. He's a good person. We started driving, and then I have absolutely no idea where he's going. But of course I wouldn't. However, after a while, it's clear that he is not going to the airport, at least not the direct route. I try to stay calm and ask him questions. He asserts that he knows where he's going. But this is the fastest secret way, stuff like that. We ended up in a pretty abandoned business area, a place for freight and other businesses that was either closed or empty. There wasn't a soul in sight, just deserted stretches of road. They begin circling the same streets, retracing where he's already been. At this point, I'm freaking out. But I don't want him to know how scared I am. It's here that I feel like I wake up to the bad position I'm in." He had these reflective sunglasses on and was smoking cigarette after cigarette. After a while of me asking where we were and where we were going, he stops talking altogether, refusing to answer me. After a long period of driving in silence, he starts to ask me about my underwear. How long I've been wearing it, what color it was, after I played along trying to be cool. I guess I made up the color. They were saying that my boyfriend wouldn't like this conversation, stuff like that. I tried to placate him, not wanting to make him angry. Then he told me he will give me $100 just to see my underwear and began to reach over and try to touch me, my knee and thigh. I just told him no, not interested. And he didn't stop trying. At this point, I'm fully aware of the danger I have, man. The only thing I wanted was to be able to get out of the car. I began to think of how bad it would hurt with how fast we were going and began to tell him that he just wants to drop me off. I can have someone come get me. I remember trying to make him think that none of this was a big deal, that he could just leave me and that I would be fine. I just wanted to leave the car. I kept trying to remind him that I had a plane to catch and that I was worried I wouldn't make it. Though I imagined I sounded calm. I know that, in my fear, I was shaking with everything I said. It's hard to remember how long we drove around and what felt like the middle of nowhere. I was leaning far into my side of the passenger seat, thinking I would just have to jump out if it got bad enough. And then after a final review, usually let him see, touch or smell my underwear for money, he speeds up and leaves the area we were driving around in. He drives me to the closest train station quickly and pulls into the parking lot. Needless to say, I have never been so happy to see a train station. I quickly get out of his car and make sure people can see me. I can remember thinking that that was important. He gets out, pulls my luggage out of his trunk, throws it out into the ground, calls me an idiot and speeds off. I did get to the airport. And I didn't make my flight. I didn't tell anyone the story for a long time because I felt so stupid that I had put myself into this now so obviously dangerous situation. I still feel this way. But now I worry that I should have told someone that maybe he did this to someone else who didn't get so lucky. I've been waiting for my senior trip for years. 10 whole days by myself without my parents and just with friends and the guys from the travel company. I had actually a great time saved for someone that made me really uncomfortable. The security guard. He was the guy in charge of the security in our wing of the hotel. The first time I met with him we chit-chatted. He was a nice guy and I'm very outgoing and love talking to people. He told me to guess his age. I guessed 45, but he was 30 and we laughed and parted ways. Next day I went out clubbing with my friends and had something to drink that my stomach didn't like at all. I went back to the hotel early in the night. Nightclub time in my country is until 6 or 7 in the morning. I went back to the hotel to a solo, wasn't feeling well and offered to accompany me to my room. I said sure. He came with me. We said our goodbyes and parted ways. Again, nothing strange. The next day he started acting strange. He asked my age. I told him I was 16, not true 18. And he didn't believe me. So he asked a guy from the travel company who I was friends with, who said I was a teen. The security guard said, "Oh, you're illegal then." Nice. I felt a little creeped out. That night, he asked if I was a virgin. And I said it was none of his business. On my 4th day there, I was waiting for the elevator with some friends. And he came. He put his arm around my shoulders and started asking questions if I had a boyfriend. And if I was going to be naughty on this trip, that we could do stuff and he wasn't going to kiss and tell. I felt really uncomfortable. After that, he kept blowing me kisses every time he saw me. He also put his hand over his heart and did kissy faces. The last day of the trip. I was about to go with some friends when I realized I forgot my phone. So I told them to wait for me. I would retrieve it from my room and be right back. And there was no one on the part of the hotel where my room was, because everyone was out having fun. Literally 0 people. My friends now with the last ones to go, my friends were downstairs. As he got to that part of the hotel, I heard someone nearby outside of my room was the security guard. He was there waiting. I got really creeped out and felt incredibly unsafe. I was totally alone except for him. What was he doing there? I just forgot about my phone and went back downstairs to my friends. I didn't tell them anything, just said that I couldn't find my cell and we went out to have a good time. On the last day of my trip, the security guard was sad. He kept telling my friends how he never got to be with me, that he knew he could show me a really good time, that he had waited for me for so long. And I let him down. Now I was sad when the trip ended obviously, but also relieved, because I didn't have to see that creepy guy again.